people for jobs. And so he is able to then help guide you and get your resume in great shape in terms of how technology will read the keywords in your resume. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Kyle and let him go through his presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you all for hopping in here tonight. I think this is going to be a really great discussion. She did mention I do resume reviews all the time. Actually, on a company right now that does them. But interestingly enough, like the company that I have isn't actually built on that system. This is something that happened as kind of a switchover. So I come from a digital marketing background as well, similar to my mom. And I found that there's so many parallels to draw between digital marketing and resume building that I had to call it out and I had to start doing something with it. So she's right in that there's a.
I think we have an echo with, a little bit more. That's not me. I think it's on Kevin's.
Okay.
Hold on a minute, guys.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Let's give me that earphone.
All right, I think you're good. All right, go ahead.
Okay, no. Anyway, so there's a big parallel between there's more to building resumes than just impressing human beings. There's also a machine component because, like many of the jobs that we do, we use automation as people who are looking for job applicants to help us weed out different applications and try and help solidify or help simplify that process. So a lot of them I'm going to talk about tonight is not just how do we write resumes? It's going to be how do the people reviewing our resumes work with these systems to make it easier on themselves. So to draw kind of a parallel, it's interesting. A lot of the people that do these resume reviews come from that hiring process on the recruiter side, on the HR side. And I think that's a little bit tricky to do. And this is not the church reference, but I'm going to use it anyway. Imagine if you were like arrested for a totally nonviolent whatever, but you had to go to court. You could have either a judge representing you, or you could have a defense attorney representing you. Like both of them have seen a lot, but that judge isn't necessarily the perfect person to represent you because they've spent all this time on the wrong side of the table. And that's kind of how I feel when I'm building brands at work every day. And I looked over at resumes and how I was building my resume, and it's so similar. So if you can make that connection in your head and realize that a company is literally, if you can look at it this way, literally paying for an asset hourly or annually, and then you can call yourself a product and then brand it that way. So that's what we want to work on tonight, in addition to all of the machine and human processes that kind of weave in and out. We want to make sure that we're using that marketing rhetoric to help grow the resumes as well. So this is a little bit of an advanced discussion. As I was writing it out, I told my mom as I got in here, I wrote it out thinking this was going to be pretty easy, but I got pretty deep. So just bear with me. I'll try and simplify those parts as much as possible, but don't hesitate to unmute. Let me know that you have a question. I think the sound's working in here, but flag me down. If not, you can always just wave your hand, or there's a raise hand button on here too. So feel free to stop me if I get a little bit too technical here. To start off, when we build out a resume, you guys have probably seen this in a career class that you've had, or maybe just working with a mentor in your field, maybe just working with a parent. We know the normal resume optimizations. We know how to build them out. You have an education section. That education section contains almost exclusively your college experience. If you're in college right now, it's field of study, college, then year graduating. So graduating 2022 or whatever. We have an education section. We usually have a skills section. We have a skills section. It includes just soft and technical skills. You try and stick to your technical skills, which I always describe when I'm talking to clients about that. technical skills is anything that has a tab open on your computer or an application open. So if you've got a Google, a Chrome, Safari, whatever open, and one of your tabs is a specific website that you use constantly for your job, that's a technical skill. Also, Excel would fall into that, technical skills, PowerPoint, Word, all that stuff. Anything that's got something window open is going to be that kind of thing. So we focus on those, and then we finish out with our soft skills: leadership, collaboration, self-motivation, things like that. Those are skills section stuff. We usually have a work experience section. This is the big one that everyone fights about. The work experience section is all of the jobs that you've had in the past. Those get a similar type of heading. It's a job title, company, years you were at the company, and then the bullets, which is a lot of content optimization and stuff like that. So that's work experience. And then we'll usually have something like an awards, an extracurricular, a community involvement, some kind of a section that just kind of pads and rounds you out as a human as well inside of the resume. So hopefully you're already familiar with those kinds of concepts, and maybe you have a resume already in place that you've kind of been working on. I'm not sure how far you guys have gotten in this college careers class. But if you have a working resume, you probably have those sections already. Okay, so now that's about where most people leave it, and I'm gonna press on here. But one thing that people miss most of all when they're talking resumes, and especially, God love them, people who come from HR, they know these systems exist, but they downplay them so much. Applicant tracking systems is the software that HR uses to help review and sometimes vet out your resumes. And here's a couple examples of them. These are pretty familiar ones. You can usually tell that you're inside of an applicant tracking system if when you hit the apply button on Glassdoor or LinkedIn or whatever, it takes you to a site that says www.something other than the company name, and then maybe the company name somewhere later on. That's usually an indication that you're on an applicant tracking system. Another indication would be, do you want to apply using your resume upload? And then you upload your resume, and then they say, great, now you can go through and do the same exact thing with these fields. That's usually an applicant tracking system as well. So they're pretty easy to find, pretty easy to realize that you're in one. And once you're in one, some of these different things kind of start to take effect. You know that you're talking to a human being mostly, because yes, they use the machines, but at the end of the day, once they're down to their last 5, their last 10, it's almost always a human being getting in there, looking at them. Now I've flip-flopped on this because I used to talk about applicant tracking systems like they were this. I come from Google, so I anticipated that we had lifted the entire Google search engine and put it over here to a hiring manager's plate where they could literally just scan in their job description, and then all the resumes would just get ranked, just like a Google engine or a Google search engine results page. It's not really how it happens. I wish it was, kind of, because I know that system really well. What actually happens is these systems are designed, they help recruiting, but they also tend to follow the candidate through not just their hiring process and their onboarding process, but a lot of times they'll attach like pay stubs and other documentation like that, even when they're hired by the company. So these are a lot more broad of systems than I initially thought. So I flip-flopped a little bit. Here's a couple of statistics for you all. And these scared the crap out of me when I heard them. 98% of all Fortune 500 companies use applicant tracking systems. That's not that scary. Here's a scary one. 75% of all resumes on any job are not even seen by human eyeballs. So that means that of the 4 hours a day you're spending in the coffee shop busting out resume applications, for 3 of those hours you could kick your feet up, watch a movie, watch 2 movies, because that time is wasted anyway. So that's the scary thing. Unless you're talking to these machines intentionally and you know how they work, you could really get blindsided. And some of your applications just won't go through, even the ones that you feel are really special. So as we go through this process, just be aware that this is the driving force behind my obsession with machines and how we're using the machines. Is that scary? A couple of statistics. you don't want to be one of those statistics. So, okay, let's move on a little bit here. So humans versus machines. I've got a resume here that I just pulled off of the internet. So we're just going to talk through kind of how machines look at this resume separately from human beings. So as a human being, you all probably looked at this resume and your eyes scanned along the left side. That's what I did. We're taught to read resumes that way because we know that there's so much valuable info on the left side. And we know that those indentations give us new concepts, and we can usually grasp a lot of, we can grasp a little bit at least from just reading that left side. So we're all constantly doing that. And when we're scanning resumes, that's kind of where we live. Human beings read top to bottom, left to right on resumes, okay? Top to bottom first, and then we'll probably read some headings, and then maybe you'll read one of the bolded headlines under the headings, maybe the education, the Bachelor of Business Administration, maybe you read the internship, number crunchers, word, things like that. So that's how we do it, top to bottom, then left to right. So if we want to put all of the important information first, which we do because we know that these are scanned by human beings, then all of our important information has to go on that left side. Does that make sense to everybody? I might be on mute here, but hopefully that's yes. So that's human beings. Machines, there might be some coders on this call, I'm not totally sure. Machines read left to right, top to bottom. Okay, so they don't have that capacity to read the design this way. They can only read in code, and that code tells them that the most important thing is the sixth word, no matter where it is. Okay, so when we're talking about optimizing for a machine, the most important information doesn't go on the left side. Most important information goes on the top, because that's the most value from the machine. And if they're assigning value to what they read first, that top section is more important. So hopefully everyone's clear on that. I'm going to give you an example, and this is where it gets a little technical. So stop me, someone just jump in, wave me down if there's any questions. Remember from math class, we have 4 quadrants on any graph. So if we separate this out into 4 quadrants, quadrant 1, top right, quadrant 2, top left, 3, bottom left, 4, bottom right, then we know that based on what we just agreed on, machine information should live somewhere in quadrants 1 and 2. That's the most valuable spot for them. For human beings, the most important information lives in quadrants 2 and 3, because that's where we're going to see them first as human beings. So we know that quadrant 2 unequivocally is the most important quadrant. It's a tie for the second most important, which is quadrants 1 and 3. And then the least important unequivocally is quadrant 4. Okay, just based on that information that we just went through. So what we're going to do now is we're going to say, okay, if we're designing structure of headlines based on that information, we know that human beings are probably 51% of the effort we should put in here, and machines are probably 49%. It might be more like 60-40%, but it's a little bit skewed toward humans because we know humans are the final decision makers. We also know that machines are designed to imitate human beings. So if anyone's going to get that extra love, it's going to be humans. So let's take our headlines and let's say, what is the most important headline for human beings? And we'll structure our resume that way. Then we'll go back and we'll look at, is there any changes that we need to make based on machines and how they might read this information? Okay, so if we take this resume right here, I'm going to condense some stuff too, because the next slide shows kind of what I would do. But if we take this resume right here, we know that humans value something like an objective first. That's good. I like where that is. The second most important thing to humans tends to be education. I also like where that is. I think that's a good 1 and 2 spot. The next most important thing, I don't think, is honors and awards, because human beings, sometimes we can understand honors and awards, especially if we've maybe been awarded the same thing. What's the Kentucky scholarship that everybody gets leaving high school? It's a $2,000 scholarship to Kentucky school. Keys, something like that. The Keys scholarship is really relatable. So if you were in that program, then that might be a good one for human beings to see, but oftentimes it doesn't happen for honors and awards. So I would move that one down for human beings. Okay, the next most important thing, I think it's true that it's something in between relevant coursework, internships, experience, that whole thing, but I might invert it because humans love experience first. That's one of their most valued things after a summary section, if you've got one, and then education. So I'd probably do experience, then internships, then relevant coursework for human beings. Okay, the next section I see is skills. I think that's also accurate. Humans probably would put skills third to last. Then we'll put this honors and awards section beneath skills section. And then activities at the very end. So that's kind of how humans would read this thing.
Hey, Kyle.
However, there is one thing. Were you going to say something, Mom?
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Oh, hang on one second. I'm sorry.
Do we even need objectives anymore? Is that even a thing? Like, what is that section supposed to be?
Glad you brought that up. I don't do objectives anymore. I used to, and I think there's value in them, but here's where I would do them. I would only do objectives. Move this laptop a little bit. I would only do objectives if you're very early in your career and you're looking for a way to help boost your resume. You don't have a lot of experience. You don't have relevant coursework, things like that you want to call out. I think a summary section, an objective section, something like that makes a lot of sense. I would also use an objective section or a summary section for someone of maybe your caliber, Mom, someone who's late in their career, who can really define themselves in a brand later on. And I kind of equate that to when we start out, especially when we're in college, we're studying all of marketing. It's very broad. So having that section to say, here's what I'm into is helpful. And then we kind of specialize, and then we grow back out. As we start to lead and we start to manage, we get a little bit more broad again. So it's nice to redefine that. So at the level that we're talking about here with college students, yes, I think it's valuable only if we don't have the experiences to fill out the resume otherwise. So experiences would be something like internships, if you have them. I know I had a board membership where I had a lot of responsibilities. If you've had a full-time job in that field, what would not be significant and what I would probably replace objectives with is like your Orange Leaf job or your Air Apostle job or whatever it is. But otherwise, I don't use objectives very often at all. Thanks for calling that out. Main reason too, outside of all the stuff that I just said, objectives is a really hard way. It goes at the top naturally, but because we know that machines really value those words, having those extra, even just supplementary words to create full sentences doesn't make sense from a machine perspective. Whereas education shows education and then big keyword, big disqualifying keyword for many candidates. And then your skills section, I would bring up to the top right below education, because the skills section has all of those keywords. And the way I do skills sections is different than this one, where I go literally technical skill, comma, space, technical skill, comma, space, technical skill, comma, space. And that is all for AI systems, that whole skills section. And then I'll do what we're going to do at the end of this part, which is I'll go back and I'll say, is there anything human related that I want to switch up in terms of order of these skills, so that the more human skills go on the left side of lines 1 and 2. How's that for technical? We're getting down in the weeds here, people. Okay, so our skills section second, because we've just moved that for the machines. Okay, and that's the only one I think I would move for machine optimization. And I'm glad we had a nice little segue to get there. Everything else looks good, and that's the way I would keep it. Now I'm going to pull up my brother's resume, and I did not get his permission to use this. So hopefully he doesn't come at me with anything. All right, so here are the headlines that I use. And like I said before, I kind of smashed some together. I think it's more valuable to combine work experience in many cases. This is, again, at the collegiate level, if you're having trouble filling out the resume, it's totally fine. Separate out internships with relevant coursework. I think they did just now. Separate it out with, if you have an Orange Leaf experience that, and you've got a bunch of white space at the bottom, for sure add that in because it's valuable. But I do condense these a lot, especially with 2 to 3 year resumes. So you'll see right here, we've got our education section first, skills section second, work experience next, and then honors and activities next. So I'm going to stop right there because I know we're doing a Q&A probably at the end. Is there any questions, Haley, as we're talking through this stuff? Is there anything I can clarify? Because I know this was as technical as it gets, but I'm going to give you a chance.
I don't really have any specific questions. I mainly joined on this so I could any extra advice type thing, because I took a class last semester that focused a lot on resume building. So I just figured the extra help always, benefits.
Yeah,
Haley,
for sure.
Haley, are you going to have an internship before you graduate?
Yeah, I plan on it. So I figure this will help with getting one.
Okay. Zoe, are you going to do an internship?
I think Zoe might have hopped off.
Oh, okay.
I don't see her on here.
All right.
Yeah, for sure. And internships, I'm talking a lot, like I said, I'm talking a lot about 2 or 3 year in resumes. Those internships, the stuff from this resume, I mean, all that stuff is valid stuff. And I'm trying to prioritize for sure the headlines that I think are most valuable, but none of this stuff is bad. If you have the experiences that are in here, you don't have to combine things, then you for sure don't have to. So, okay.
And we're trying to put it all on one page. Is that the goal?
That is the goal. All on one page. Again, maybe 15 years in, something like that, I would switch to 2 pages. Otherwise, very condensed language. That's the thing though, is it is 1 page, but we want all of everything on that 1 page, every pixel of black ink on that page to mean something, because you only have a page. And so, yeah, I mean, within 14 years of starting, you can still fit a lot of stuff on 1 page. I mean, you're only calling out really valuable stuff because they're not reading it thoroughly. They're scanning it. And then you have to convince them to read it thoroughly. So yeah, keep it to 1 page for sure in the college setting. So here's Tyler's resume. Here's Tyler's resume. Here are the headlines we just talked about. We've got an education section, skills, work experience, honors, and activities in that order. Okay, now let's talk about some bullets. So we're back to our 4 quadrants here. This is where it gets really interesting in how we can play with wording and become kind of poetic in terms of how we're organizing our words in specific bullets, not just bullets, but skills section too. That's 2 lines if we can fill it up. But inside of bullets themselves, we know that we're using keywords across this entire thing. There's keywords that humans relate well to, and then there's keywords that machines relate well to. For humans, it's mostly rhetoric and it's numbers. So increased sales volume by 45%. That's a great human keyword or keyword phrase that a machine can't comprehend. Machines can comprehend the keywords listed out in your job description. So you're talking about getting an internship, any of these job descriptions out there, you can pull keywords and phrases directly from there to speak to machines. But the kicker is, and the difference between most candidates and candidates who have gone through this discussion, is that we want to make sure that those keywords for machines pulled from the job description end up somewhere in quadrants 1 and 4. So we leave room for the rhetoric in quadrants 2 and 3. So I'm trying to think of an example, and I want to build one off the top of my head if I can. So an initial work experience. So I'm looking at Tyler's data analyst position. If you can do something like strategically, that's actually a great example. So strategically audit and assemble ongoing reports. That one's bolded because it was found in the job description and I didn't put it in those 2 quadrants that machines love. Strategically audited and assembled ongoing reports. That's a form of rhetoric. The way that action verb was chosen was to imply strategic roles and intelligent kind of mindset, kind of like a chess player, to give you that kind of an idea. And then moving on, performing exploratory analysis. I pulled that from the job description itself. And developing data-driven. Data-driven is another keyword that people love in that specific field. And it's data analysis. And then you go right back into insights for such high-profile clients as Procter & Gamble. Now we're talking about specific names of companies. Again, machines just don't get that, but humans do. So we're trying to push that toward where humans can see them and push those machine valued keywords toward where machines will do. And by the way, I said most applicant tracking systems don't work like a Google search, but some of them do. So some of them you can actually put in keywords, and then the system will rank applications, and then HR has to go in there themselves and say, all right, get rid of everything but the top 5. But just some of them don't. So that's why we're talking so much about the machines and stuff. So as you're writing out those bullets, see if you can play with those wordings a little bit, and think about where you're crossing that center of page in the bullets, and transform your language between humans and machines that way. It's been really, really successful in the past. People who get these resumes, they don't have problems finding jobs. And I know the market's hot, but this methodology of doing things, no one's doing them, and it's making an impact to the hiring managers.
I think you're saying in a sentence, because your sentences go all the way from left to right, in a sentence, to make sure that the most important words are in the first half of the sentence, or on the where it appears on the left side of the page. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Numbers and rhetoric, the human keywords, should appear furthest to the left side of the page. If you can create a sentence that has numbers and rhetoric on the left side of that sentence, this is the crazy part, right? And then keywords and key phrases on the right side of that sentence. That's what we're looking for.
Okay,
All right.
so for the machines that are okay at the top right, human words and rhetoric are on the left side.
Exactly, because humans read top to bottom,
Okay,
and then left to right. Machines
Okay.
are the opposite. Okay.
okay,
All right. So now, out of the technicalities, we've structured our resume. We know where the headlines go. We have reasoning behind them. We know how to build out bullets. The beautiful thing is the structure and the understanding of how these are looked at can help fuel our resume content. So what are we putting inside of these resumes? We already talked about, we have an education section. That's an obvious one. We have the skills section. Again, just go through what tabs are open on your computer during your internship, or if you're not on an internship right now, what tabs do you see open on people's computers out there? And is there any way you can pull that into your computer and mess around with it so you can put that in a skills section? We have the skills section. We've got our awards and extracurriculars. That's your fraternities. That's your sororities. That's your scholarships. Any awards that you might have, maybe your GPA. Now that could probably go up toward education. So we could fill all those out. The content for your bullets is a little bit trickier because you're writing them every day that you're on the job, or every day that you're in class. You're writing those bullets yourself, and you're choosing which bullets to highlight. So I've got 4 parts here that I think is most valuable, and this is the way the 4 steps to getting yourself aligned, getting those bullets written out. First of all, you have to find a direction, and it doesn't have to be a commitment. So you know, if I woke up tomorrow and I said I don't like marketing anymore, I want to do, I don't know, finance or something like that, then okay, I can roll with that. I just got to know what people are writing about in their resumes for finance. And then I can always switch it tomorrow. But letting yourself off the hook from the commitment part, even when you find a direction, or letting yourself off the hook for the commitment part allows you to find direction day of and always be moving forward. Because the nice thing is it's kind of like a 90-degree angle right in front of you. Every step you take toward anything gets you closer to everything else. You're never going backwards as you step somewhere, you know, as you grow, you're never going backwards away from something else. So give yourself the freedom to not have to have a long-term commitment. But whatever you want to do tomorrow, whatever you're interested in, grow that way, and then apply those bullets across different interests as you have them. So always find a direction first. Think about what you want to do today. You've got that in your head. Then we research the job type. So I just mentioned, what if I woke up, I wanted to do a finance degree? Well, I'm on LinkedIn, and I don't want to get too far into LinkedIn because I know we're talking about this next time. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm looking at jobs under finance, and I'm looking for job titles and job descriptions that I'm interested in. Maybe if because I'm in marketing, maybe I'm on my search team now, Google search stuff. Maybe I want to go to Facebook next. Well, I'm typing in Facebook into LinkedIn, and I'm looking at what those job descriptions say. because I know that later on I'm going to match those job descriptions to my bullets, and I want to pre-write those bullets in my head from the job description and then go out and do those things. So to give you an example, one of the things that I found early in marketing was they wanted someone who had managed a budget. Really early marketers start managing budgets oftentimes as their first job. And so if you've done it in the past, it's really valuable. And I found that through the bullets that I was looking at on LinkedIn. So I knew that I had to somehow get that bullet onto my resume. And that helped me to have direction in terms of, okay, what am I going to do today to grow my career? That's a hard question if you're not thinking about little tiny steps, right? This is a 1,000-step process. You take a step every day, but not if you don't have any kind of direction, and not if you're not researching what that direction holds for you in terms of specific asks about the job. So that's going to help fuel your content as well. Then what I just talked about, apply those missing skills through whatever means possible. So I mentioned before that sometimes you have to understand that there's an application being used and see if you can find a way to use that yourself. My example was Google Ads. You can run advertisements through Google. I'm sure everyone's seen those top search results. You'll see a little ad next to my advertisements. Well, I had never run those ads before, but I knew that there was a platform called Google Ads advertising platform. And I knew that people were using that platform to run actual advertisements with an actual budget that clients gave them. And so I knew that I had to somehow get into that platform. It's free to get into. So I got into there and I did every single thing that you would do except for run actual ads. So I had a chance to do all of this extra stuff in the platform. And then I could go in and say, hey, under skills, I am Google Ads certified. I've built campaigns. I've had them review all this stuff that was listed out in the bullets, except for I didn't run with a budget. That was the only thing. But if you can find those applications across whatever job field you're interested in, it's a game changer and people love it. Even if you can't go all the way, even if you can only do 90, 95% of what is allowed. Another example, accounting. I mean, if you're a bookkeeper, or if you want to go into bookkeeping or tax season or something, yeah, it's nice to have an internship, have a company that will let you into their books. But sometimes you just got to track your own personal finances and say, hey, I budgeted out of this, rebudgeted out of this, or hey, you know, I'm going to come to church and see if I can just look over their books and make any suggestions that I can. Now I'm a consultant. So there's applications out there if you can find them.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah.
We're on a 5-minute warning.
Okay, thank you. Awesome. We're perfect. We're going to land this plane right on time, I think. Okay, and then the last thing is record results. So it's not enough to have done that stuff. You have to make sure that once you've done that, you've looked at the before and looked at the after and made a connection of what you did. So I told you before, I downloaded Google Ads. I record everything that I did, went right onto those bullets in a way that was pleasing to the tone, using rhetoric, okay, marketing rhetoric, just salesy practice stuff. I was intentional with my action verbs, strategically did this, led this, I don't know if you're an engineer, invented this. Those are big action verbs. And I found real numbers associated with them and put those numbers to the left side of the resume where humans can see those numbers. So it was, to give you a Google Ads example, built a campaign budgeted for $40,000 in a month. People love that. So I did something like that, and you can do the same thing. Just make sure you're tracking your recording results and attaching numbers if you can, or at least some kind of a some kind of a qualitative result if you can as well. Okay, so that's resume content. And now I'm going to turn it over. If there are any questions at all, I hope you'll ask them, because I know this was a ton of information. It was slightly advanced, and the technicality is a little bit confusing, but I think we pretty much got there. So I'll turn it over right now. Otherwise, I'll say thanks. You can reach me right here if anyone has any questions. Haley, if you have any questions, or if anyone's reading or watching this recording later on, that's my email. Feel free to email me for any clarifications, or if you also would like to purchase a resume.
I don't see your email on here, Kyle. So can you say what it is?
You don't see it on there?
Nope.
Yeah, okay. It's
Oh,
Kyle
wait,
at,
never mind. It came up. I'm sorry.
okay.
Go ahead.
No worry. All right, so is there any questions at all? Mom, do you have any questions?
Can you please send us a copy of a resume with the quadrants where you're kind of pointing out the kind of some rhetoric language that you think is important and show where it's featured in the two corners that you mentioned? Just
Yeah,
so
for
an
sure.
example.
Yeah, for sure. I can do that.
Okay, because I know we've talked a lot about rhetoric and certain kinds of words, but it might be nice for them to have some examples of like, what does that look like, or give a list of words that you think could be valuable words.
Yeah, for sure. And just to give you a quick touch on that, what it all comes down to is the action verb on the left. That's where most of your rhetoric goes in. So that first verb that you used, managed, led, coordinated with, collaborated with, that's where the rhetoric comes in. And you choose those words very intentionally to promote the right brand for yourself in terms of how you want to be viewed as a leader, as a follower, as a good teammate, stuff like that. But yeah, for sure, I can send that.
Great, thank you.
And then I have a really short question.
Yeah.
Like, what do you recommend for like sizing of fonts and stuff? Like,
Yeah, go ahead. Was that it? Yeah, for sure. No, so fonts an interesting one. I usually I'll jump around between a couple. Verdana's a good one. Verdana. Times New Roman's always good. A lot of people use Arial. That's the font type. The sizing, I'm usually at 11 or 12. Maybe 12 for some college students, maybe 11. Depends on how much you've got in there. And then check out the layout part of Word. Moderate indentations is the way to go, I think. It leaves plenty of white space on the top and bottom, but it does, it gives you more room to go out sideways, left and right. So the entire document is size 11 or 12, except for your name at the very top. So it's name, and then right beneath it, so name at 48, not 48, maybe like 36 size font. Right beneath it is your email, phone number, city, state. You don't need your whole address anymore. That was back when we were mailing our offers. City, state, that's all 11 from then down.
all right, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, thank you, Kyle. We appreciate your time, and we are going to try and make this available on our YouTube channel for Union Baptist Church so that anyone can view this later on. So thank you very much, and thank you all for joining. We appreciate it. Have a
Thanks
good
for
night.
having me.